Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. It's 4 o'clock in the UK. It's bright and sunny outside, but I'm in today because I've got something which I'm quite excited about, actually. Over the last few weeks, I've been doing a few live Q&As with people all around the world talking about their games and stuff. And today, I am joined by Josh from Chip Theory Games, who should appear magically in this window when I press this button here. No, you haven't magically appeared. Okay, bear with us a minute.
Hello.
We can hear you. My streaming software just seems to have had a momentary slowdown and it stopped responding. So I'm assuming everybody can hear me and see me okay. And I assume we're going out. Yeah, we're going out, but my software has just frozen. So this is brilliant. It was all working fine beforehand, but now all of a sudden, when you actually need it, it's not working. So yeah, bear with us a minute. What I'm probably going to have to do, this has happened once before. If you're watching this on YouTube, just bear with us a minute. The stream is going to be interrupted slightly while I reboot my software, but then it's going to pick up on the same link. So just hang fire there, and we'll be good to go in a minute. Okay, I think we are back on. I think so. Hopefully we are back on.
Yeah, I can see you on the YouTube channel. I don't know if anyone can hear you or not because I have it muted. So
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're back on. I've started broadcasting, and we are here. If you are watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please let us know if you can now hear me, see me. Josh is not on screen yet, but if I click this little button here, there you go. Josh has just appeared in the middle window. Well, he has on my broadcasting software. So yeah, volume is low. Right, I'll tell you why that is. Here we go. On top of all other issues, microphone. There you go. Right. We're here. Right. So apologies everybody for that. Some technical issues at the start. Yeah. Paul says, sounds like Paul's mic is still in his pocket. Yeah, not quite. But we are here. Right. Thank you very much, Josh, for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Cloudspire, which for those people who don't know, is a game. It's a board game. I really like it. I have said that it is probably my #1 game of 2019. Now, the reason why I've said probably is I don't release my top games of 2019 until the end of 2020. I do it a year after everybody else. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I want to be different. But two, it's very hard for me at the end of 2019 to say, right, these were my favourite games, because some of them I haven't played as many times as I'd like. So what I do is I basically wait a year, and at the end of 2020, so this December, is when I will be announcing what my best games were from 2019. At the moment, Cloudspire is my number one. It might still be at the end of the year, I don't know, but we will see. So that's why. Anyway, so yeah, Cloudspire, we're here to talk about Cloudspire, which is back on Kickstarter right now. Josh, just a little bit of an introduction to you about your role at Chip Theory Games and what it is that you do.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Josh Welgus. The internet community knows me mostly as Ghillie, because our lead designer and one of the owners of the company is Josh Carlson. So we gave me kind of a internet handle to alleviate confusion between the Joshes. But I am a designer, and I do marketing, and I do writing, and I do community management, and all kinds of stuff at Chip Theory. We all wear a lot of hats at Chip Theory because we're a small company, and we kind of do everything. But I did Cloudspire was the first game with Chip Theory that I had a design credit on. I've worked on a lot of the Too Many Bones expansion content from Undertow forward. I don't know. I do a whole lot of everything on Cloudspire. I had a heavy hand in helping design the Aurora faction, and then a lot of the solo campaign. So cool. that was kind of my role on that game specifically.
Yeah, as you say, small company, everybody's wearing multiple hats. So you've got your official title, but then of course you dabble in the other stuff as well.
Yep, exactly.
So for those people who are in the chat who don't know what Cloudspire is, can you sum it up with an elevator pitch, which I'm sure you've probably done a few times before?
It's a tough game to summarize because there's so much going on, but it's we call it a tower defense MOBA or multiplayer online battle arena inspired board game. So because there's co-op, because there's solo, because there's PvP in the game, that's a little reductive and a little simple, but yeah, you control a faction. You are trying to destroy, in most cases, your opponent's fortress gate. You have minions that march in an automated fashion. You have heroes that you can control all around the board, and then you have a fortress that you can upgrade and unlock new abilities for your faction. So PvP is pretty straightforward. You're trying to destroy the other player's gates, and the solo and co-op modes add a really puzzly, more objective-based element to the game that was heavily inspired, believe it or not, by GoldenEye for N64 in terms of the way that the difficulty scaled and additional objectives were added. That was kind of the thesis statement for solo mode in terms of the round system and the multiple objectives you can complete. So yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I mean, when it was first described to me as, tower defense game, MOBA inspired kind of thing, I was like, nah, not my thing. Totally not my thing. So if you've also just heard that statement and you're thinking, yeah, it doesn't sound like that's for me, give it a try, because there's something about this game that I think is, it is special. Every year, X number of hundreds of games come out, or even thousands, whatever. And a lot of them are very similar. A lot of them are derivative Euro games, which I personally love. But then every so often you get something which breaks the mold, is special, is different. And certainly this game is. And I'm glad you mentioned the puzzle mode for the solo and the co-op games, because they're definitely that. You're sat there and you're working it out and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. If I move to there, he's going to move 3 and then I'm going to be in range of that. And it is very much a tactical puzzle game. But it isn't, once you've played it once and solved it, that it isn't it, because there's variability in the setup and it's still playable. Each scenario, I believe, is still playable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Cloudspire. Now, the Kickstarter, it is back on Kickstarter right now. Just go through what this Kickstarter is.
Yeah. So for one thing, Cloudspire is an absolutely insanely expensive game to print. And part of the reason that Chip Theory games are not in retail for the most part is simply because the margins are slimmer than normal, even though they are very expensive games. So the primary thing that this Kickstarter is kind of raising funding for is a big reprint of the base game of Cloudspire, a second print run, and then two additional new factions for the game. So again, every game that you sit down and play, you play as a very asymmetrical faction. Has completely unique fortress abilities, completely unique minions, completely unique heroes to move around the board. So we're adding 2 new factions to the game, 2 new faction expansions, a Sky Pirate expansion faction called Horizon's Wrath,
yep.
and then a mercenary faction called the Uprising. And then in addition to that, there is it's kind of how we're operating stretch goals for this campaign. There's a new relic and event expansion called Heroes Bounty that is also a part of this Kickstarter campaign, and that is free for everyone who pledges at least the $55 level. That's
right.
It'll be a $15 expansion sold separately after the campaign.
Yeah,
those are the main things. Those are the main things that are part of the campaign. There's some new stuff. We have some new minis that folks can purchase if they're into painting minis. There's a little mini scenario book that can be purchased for pretty cheap. But the main thing is the reprint and the new factions.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you missed out on Cloudspire the first time around, you can just back it now. You don't have to get all of the extra stuff. You can just go onto the Kickstarter now and get it. It's interesting what you were saying about the price to retail, because obviously I work full time in the industry, so I know the general percentages of how much the publisher sells it to the distributor, how much the distributor sells it to the next guy, and how much the next guy sells it to the shop, and then how much the shop sells it to you. And I know what those percentages are along the way. And, you know, Cloudspire, whilst this is an expensive game, when you see what content you've got in there, both physically and in the amount of gameplay, I personally believe, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a fan, is it's very good value for money with what you get out of it. But yeah, I can imagine how much it would cost to actually make that game. So cool. Right, so that is on Kickstarter right now. There is, at the time of this recording, 57 hours to go, and there are 4,398 backers, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we had no idea what to expect going into this campaign, to be honest. You know, Too Many Bones is our most popular game.
Yeah.
At least thus far, and we kind of are getting a handle on what we can expect from Too Many Bones Kickstarters. With this one, though, with being up against Frosthaven, being up against Ankh, it being in the middle of a global pandemic, we honestly set our expectations for this campaign pretty conservatively. We've been blown away and really, really, really excited by the response and the funding amount so far. So it's been phenomenal. We appreciate our community and the enthusiasm around this project so much, because it's beyond our expectation.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you were talking to me yesterday about, and we won't go into too many details, was about the first Kickstarter for Cloudspire when that launched. And I think you were sort of saying that it was a little bit of a slow burner at the time. People weren't sure about it, and it's only in the last 6 months or so that popularity of the game has suddenly picked up and people are talking about it.
Yeah, I think so. It's not, Too Many Bones, I mentioned, is by far our most popular title so far. We can't manage to keep it in stock, even though we continue to print it all the time. And that was really the game that put chip theory on the map. Our Hoplomachus games were popular, and with folks like Ricky Royal, it's one of his favorite games of all time. But Too Many Bones was the game that put us on the map, and that was a 1 to 4 player cooperative experience. So I think a lot of people were expecting us to come out of the gate with Cloudspire being another, fully 1 to 4 player cooperative experience, and it's really not. It's its own. There's 2 player co-op scenarios in the game, but it's really its own beast. Very different from Bones in many, many, many ways. There's obviously a little bit of inspiration in the way that we handle some things, but so I think it kind of it wasn't what people expected for our next title, and so it's taken and it's a big, beastly, complicated game to learn as well. So I think it's kind of taken people almost a full year to come to. I don't know. I don't want to say come to terms with what it is, but really, it seems like really in the last 3 months, as people have had more time to dig into it, that the community around it and the enthusiasm around it has really started to pick up compared to maybe where it was upon original release. The original Kickstarter campaign too, we were a little bit behind on development at the time. We launched it maybe a couple weeks before we should have, and then made the brilliant decision to go to Essen in the middle of the campaign. And it was a little bit of a mess, just to be honest. So it's been fun to see. It's been fun to finally present the game, as we wanted to and as we originally envisioned it on this Kickstarter.
Yeah, cool. Right, now I'm keeping an eye on the chat as we're chatting away, and there's a message in from Ben Clapperton. He says, will Too Many Bones core box be in the Cloudspire Pledge Manager?
Yes, yeah. So one thing that we do that's a little bit different from maybe a lot of other companies is you can add anything that we have in stock. So the only real exception to that right now is some of our Hoplo content, which has been out of stock for a bit. But anything that we have in stock, or that we're going to have in stock, because Too Many Bones is between prints right now, we do offer in our pledge managers. And one of the huge things about this campaign is, so Cloudspire is a 15-pound-ish game, roughly.
No, I keep carrying it up the stairs.
Yeah, it's insanely expensive to ship, especially internationally. Yeah. And our shipping rates have always been pretty high because we charge what it costs to actually ship this stuff. For this campaign, for the first time ever, we're offering capped shipping rates. And so in Europe, you can ship no matter what you purchase, including in the pledge manager. So if you add a complete Too Many Bones collection, that capped shipping rate still applies of $20 USD. So Too Many Bones and all Too Many Bones content other than promo content will be available in the pledge manager after the campaign. Yeah,
and a follow-up question from Jace. He's basically saying, unfortunately, she's not in a position, or they're not in a position at the moment to be able to purchase it. Will everything be available afterwards?
Yes, yeah. Right. So two different answers to that question. One is we will have late pledges available as long as the pledge manager is open. So that'll be roughly 2 months, from the date, from Thursday when the campaign ends. The pledge manager will be open for roughly 2 months after. Yep. And then nothing that we produce, we don't do anything Kickstarter exclusive. We don't like creating FOMO, and we especially don't like creating FOMO in the middle of a global pandemic when we know a lot of people are facing difficult financial circumstances. So while a lot of the bundles that are available on the Kickstarter may not be available for the same price in the future, all of the content that is unlocked during this campaign will be available moving forward. These stretch goals will be unlocked forevermore, which is something that we find to be a much more customer-friendly practice.
Yeah, cool. Now, the Kickstarter campaign was it a 10-day campaign or an 11-day campaign?
About a 10-day-ish campaign. I think 10 days. Yeah, it ends on Thursday night, U.S. time, I think around 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time, U.S. on Thursday night. So, we took a little bit of flack for that. Again, the shorter campaign, again, in the middle of a pandemic. It's just what we like to do with our campaigns, and this is something we kind of learned from the Cloudspire campaign, where we weren't as hands-on and then traveled to Germany in the middle of it. Yeah, we really like being super engaged during the campaign, answering every comment as they come in as much as we can, doing really, really meaty daily updates. And when you run a campaign for 3 weeks or more and try to run the campaign that way, it takes a toll. So these Kickstarter campaigns are company-wide efforts. Basically, it's all hands on deck from every single employee while we run them, and we don't like grinding. If we run 2 Kickstarters a year, that means that we essentially grind all development and other projects to a halt for 2 months out of the year while we run Kickstarters. So we've kind of shifted for the Too Many Bones last campaign that we did, and then for this one, we're going to 10-day campaigns simply so that we can really, really focus on it while it's live, and then offer late pledges afterwards to allow folks who missed out to get in. Okay, right. Let's just talk a little bit more detail then about the 2 new factions. So we're not going to cover the basic 5 factions in this video. We're going to talk about the 2 new ones, which is Horizon's Wrath and the Uprising. Now, I did a video last week where I played, and this is on my channel if you want to go and see it, but I did a playthrough video where I played Braunen and Ricky Royal played Horizon's Wrath. And wow, do they play very differently. So give us a quick overview of how Horizon's Wrath works. Yeah, so the one thing I'd just say in terms of, and this applies to the gear logs we make for Too Many Bones, this applies to the factions for Cloudspire. We don't we kind of don't feel like it's worth adding a faction or a new character to our asymmetrical titles without making them play completely differently
Right.
as much as possible. We really like to make people, wrap their mind around brand new mechanics when we do this. So Horizon's Wrath, they are sky pirates. So one of the things that they can do is they have a plank that they can pull and then completely relocate their fortress to a different location on the map, which is a completely unique mechanic. They have these units called swabbies, and they are limited to the amount you can use per game to 3, whereas all your other minions kind of are regenerate and you can use them infinitely. And they are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of martyrs for lack of a better word. They can go out there, and if they die, they allow your other units to upgrade. The Horizon's Wrath is the name of the Sky Pirates ship, and they have a unique upgrade system where they can add cannons to their ship that can shoot all the way across the map. Typically, the spires or towers that you're building in Cloudspire have a very limited range. These cannons can shoot all the way across the map. They have no range limits whatsoever. However, they can only shoot in a straight line, whereas all the other towers or spires in the game can shoot in 360 degrees. So that's some of the big stuff that makes them really crazy and really unique. They've been a lot of fun to work on and a lot of fun to watch playtesters wrap their head around.
Yeah. Now, when I played the game against Ricky, I was quite adamant that I didn't want to know anything about this faction beforehand, and don't go into a game of Cloudspire doing that. You really should know what the opponent can do, and I didn't. And I said, Ricky, you just do stuff, and as you do it, explain to me. And then he put these cannons on his ship, and the way he'd lined it up is it actually hit my fortress. So I was like, well, you're shooting all the way over there, and it hit my... So then what I did is I started building spires in the middle of the board, basically to protect myself from it. But the way that the swabby worked was interesting. The cannons, the plank was fantastic because, of course, I had a grouped stack of units that arrived on his plank, and he just went, I'll just pull that plank. And I'm like, what, I've lost all of my units? Yeah, it was really good. So, the Uprising. I don't know anything about the Uprising apart from a couple of little bits that I've read. So, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, the Uprising are interesting. So in the game, in Cloudspire, there's a market phase where you can hire mercenaries that are from outside of your faction in order to fight for you. So what we've done is we've developed a faction that is full of mercenaries. So not only does the Uprising function as their own unique faction, they have some unique heroes and such that you can use, but they also, if you're not using them as a playable faction in your game, you can incorporate all the units from the Uprising into your market to add market diversity. So it's a little bit of a double-edged expansion in that sense. You get a fully unique faction and then a huge market variety infusion at the same time. So a lot of their fortress abilities and stuff revolve around manipulating the market and being able to get new, more exciting units, cycle the market, have control, get units from the market that other players don't have access to, things along those lines, so that you can, there's obviously some randomization that's going in there because the market draws each wave are randomized, but by upgrading your fortress and that kind of thing, you gain a lot more control. Also, something that's really unique about the Uprising, as opposed to the other factions, which have one hex that is their fortress gate that everybody's going after. The Uprising have 2 different way gates that they can deploy from. And so you can kind of split the interest of your opponent a little bit and deploy from multiple positions to try and give yourself an advantage. Those are the big things with the Uprising.
And those way gates are actually on the map as well, aren't they?
They are, yes. Correct.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I was asked on a Facebook group last week, I think, was about Cloudspire and about the complexity level and also about the asymmetrical. And they were referring to games which are very asymmetric, such as Root, where I've not played it, but from what I've been told, each of the factions plays in a completely different way and uses completely different rules. The way I explained Cloudspire to them is that the core rules are the same, okay? The core rules do not change. The way your minions move, your objectives, all of those core rules are exactly the same. However, the way that your faction plays tactically and strategically, that's different. So you will have certain keywords or talents as they are in the game that you need to learn, but the core rules are still the same for everyone. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Right, question in the chat. This is actually not to do with Cloudspire. This is Hoplomachus. Anything new planned for that?
We are, so in terms of the original Hoplomachus, all the original Hoplomachus content, we're in the process of kind of evaluating how to handle that, how to look at maybe doing a reprint or not.
Right.
Historically, it has not been a huge seller for us. I think a lot of people, it certainly has its fans. So I'm not trying to like say there's no interest. There definitely is. We get asked, I probably field at least one question every day about Hoplo, but it is not a huge seller to the point that we right now would feel comfortable doing a minimum print run on it as it stands right now. So it's something we're looking at. It will probably, the content that's out right now will probably be out for a while, and then if the base games do run out, they will probably also be out for a while. We feel like we'd have to at least let demand build back up for a while before that stuff would be feasible to reprint. So I know that's not the answer that a lot of people want to hear. We never put any game into production with the intent of ever letting it go out of print necessarily. We're not, but right now the way that it sells, it doesn't justify a full print run as it stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be because Too Many Bones was the first chip theory game I came across, and then people started telling me about Hoplo. It could be that Hoplo, people are now sort of take a look at it because of your other games, and then there might be an interest in it. So right,
also, I'll also just say that that Hoplo, again, like the neoprene and chips was a thing with the Hoplo games, but the like crazy blinged out massive production that we've done on Too Many Bones and Cloudspire wasn't really a part of our chip theory brand at the time that the Hoplo games were being made.
Right.
So it's also, I think people look at it and they see that like maybe the graphic design was from our early days as a company and that kind of thing. It doesn't look quite like as cool as Cloudspire and Too Many Bones do on a surface level. Right. So I think that also maybe affects the long-term sales of it a little bit too. Yeah.
Okay. So touching on that, I want to know why Cloudspire has been created so that it can be played underwater. Because it can. I mean, you've got neoprene mats, you've got the chips, all of the cards are plastic, the player mats are plastic. I mean, literally, without the rule book, I could play the game in a swimming pool.
That's
is there
accurate,
a reason for that?
Well, it wasn't designed to be waterproof intentionally. That's a nice side effect of the decisions we have made around its production. That's a question we get asked all the time, right? I mean, why don't you tone down the production of this game so I can afford it? Why don't you tone down the production of this game, so that it can be printed for cheaper and it can be put into retail and so on and so forth. And what we always tell people, and this is the honest truth. I mean, there's two layers to it, right? So part of what makes our games so enjoyable to play, one is like when you lift off the lid, it blows your mind what everything looks like compared to a lot of other games, and it feels different. Like the weighty chips and putting them on neoprene. Like there's a reason that poker, there's a reason that poker feels good to play, because you're playing it on a neoprene mat with chips that you're kind of playing with and stacking. Yeah, that's a part of the experience. Like we don't put that in the games to hide gameplay deficiencies, but we do think it enhances the enjoyment of literally playing the game. And then there are mechanics in the game too, that are designed around that. The health chips and the health chip mechanics that we put into the game, and the spire stacking mechanics where you can see what upgrades they have based on color, those would not work with cardboard discs. Like things would be tipping over all over the place, and we need a completely different system to allow some of those gameplay mechanics to work. Then on the other hand, putting in a really, really cool organization system and, high-end insert in our games, doing things like PVC cards where people don't need to sleeve them and use, single-use plastics and that kind of thing for protecting them, where people know if I buy this game, my cards are going to last forever. I'm not going to have to worry in 10 years when I've played it a bunch about trying to find a replacement deck, that kind of thing. I mean, You don't have to buy a $90 aftermarket insert just to be able to organize and play your game. I mean, like that all goes into our thought process. So yes, our stuff's expensive. But as you mentioned earlier, with the level of stuff that's in there, you really have everything you're ever going to need right there in the box. And you're going to have that premium experience every time you play our game. So again, not designed to be intentionally waterproof. That's just a happy side effect of the way that we operate.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I opened my copy of Undertow and I got these cards out and I went, oh, what are these? These are weird. These are plastic. Oh, these are weird. And then the next day I got up and went, wait a minute, I don't need to sleeve these. I can shuffle these and they're perfectly, and they're not getting damaged. And I was like, right, now I get it. Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
Right, we've got a question in. Will you publish the whole storyline, lore, faction details in some way, shape or form? I assume Cloudspire here.
Yeah, I am wondering if this is maybe somebody who commented on Kickstarter last night.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to come up with a suitable answer. That's a good question. We're still evaluating. Excuse me. We're still evaluating all of the content that may or may not go into the second hardcover lore book for Cloudspire, the Ankar's Plunder book that is one of the add-ons on the Kickstarter, and it's not a bad idea. So Ryan Howard is the author and kind of the brain trust for all Cloudspire lore, and he does have a full world Bible developed that we were looking at, and we looked at a lot and had him develop a lot prior to beginning development on art and everything for Cloudspire. This was back 2 years ago. So it's a good thought. I can't answer it with any certainty in either direction, but we are going to be looking to pack as much content, art, lore, etc. into this second book as we possibly can. We'd have to go back and relook at a lot of that content to see if it's well developed enough that it would make sense to put in a book, but it's absolutely something we'll look at for sure.
Right. Okay. We got a question in from Sebastian in the chat. And he's asking questions about the solo campaign. Now, I've only started playing the Braunen campaign, so what I can say is about that. He's basically saying, when you play the Braunen campaign, do the opposite faction always the same, or is it a free choice? So in the Braunen campaign, in the solo campaign book, it starts off, scenario 1 is the Braunen versus the heirs, and then scenario 2 is against the Grove Tenders. That's as far as I've got. I assume scenario 3 is then against the Nerora, and then that's it for the Braunen, because the Griege was in the expansion book. Is that right?
Yeah. So all of the I'm trying to see what. So if the question is, are you always playing against the same faction in each scenario? There is always a faction that is called for in a specific scenario, and yes, you will always fight that faction. There are no scenarios where it's like randomly draw a faction and that's who you're going to fight against, and that's simply because we have to. Those scenarios are very, very tightly tuned in terms of the types of units that you're fighting against and that kind of thing. If the base game scenarios all only interact with the base game factions, and actually the same is true of Horizon's Wrath and the Uprising. They only interact with the base game factions, and that was done simply because we wanted to allow folks to buy factions in any order that they wanted to. We didn't want to force you to buy the Griege if you hate bugs and you wanted to, in order to jump to the Sky Pirates, which you think look really, really cool. There is in the Kickstarter campaign, there is a mini scenario book that's going to have 4 solos and 2 co-ops called Ankar's Plunder. Those 4 solos and 2 co-ops will integrate all of the expansion content in some way. So you'll have a chance to fight against the Griege, you'll have a chance to fight against Horizon's Wrath and the Uprising, so on and so forth. But yeah, we didn't want to force people to buy content they didn't want. Again, just trying to be customer friendly in that regard. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so, yeah. And Sebastian, just going back on something we touched on right at the start when we were talking about the solo scenarios and also the cooperative scenarios, they are created like puzzles. You can see that the designers got into them, that you can go, right, okay, we've got a specific objective, we need to do this, and therefore it is fixed in a particular scenario which other faction that you're playing against. It couldn't just be pick a random faction and then play a random game. The scenarios are very much custom created with specific objectives. Certainly when as I said, I've only played the first 2, but when I went into the second one, I was like, oh wow, this is completely different from the first one, and I'm going to have to approach this in a completely different way. But it's allowed me to learn the Brawnen a bit better, and also playing against the heirs and playing against the Grove Tenders, you get to know what they can do as well. So cool. There was also a question in earlier on from Successful Geek, and they were saying that they've heard that this game doesn't really work at more than 2 players. Now, in the last week, I have said twice to people, I think if you're only going to play this game solo, it's still worth it. I think it's still worth the money if you're only going to play this game solo because the solo content is that good, okay? Then you've got the 1v1 content. But if we're talking about going to more than 2 players, I have played a 3-player game of this once, 1v1v1, and I wasn't too keen on that. It was probably my least preferred option. But 2v2, oh wow. I mean, I love team games, okay? And I've played this game, I've played Cloudspire once, 2v2. I'll be honest with you, it went on a long time, but what a game. It was fantastic because you not only had your faction against another faction, but you were working with somebody else who had their own special abilities, and it was just brilliant. So the 2v2 option, if I could play that every day, that would be fantastic. So yeah, it does work with more than 2 players. Any plans to do anything? Are there 3-player cooperative scenarios, or are they all only 2-player?
They're not. So I'll also just respond to that by saying, like, so I think the people that this kind of game appeals to the most are people who are really tactical, strategic thinkers who really want to outwit and outmatch their opponent in some way. And I'll definitely say that 3 and 4 player is if you're playing 3 and 4 player free for all, not the 2v2 that you were mentioning, Paul.
Yeah.
There's a lot more chaos and there's a lot more things that are outside of your control. And I think that often kind of rubs people the wrong way. It's very chaotic. And as a chaotic neutral personality type myself, I kind of love it because like I don't always like play to really win. Like I just like to cause chaos and watch what happens.
Right.
But yeah, 3-player and 4-player, I would agree that they are not free for all. Again, they are not necessarily like the best ways to play Cloudspire. The other thing that's just happening with when you bring 4 factions onto the table is that there's just an insane amount of interactions that are happening with all the abilities. And if you don't know the other factions really well, it can feel like there's 100 different kind of gotcha moments where you're like, I didn't know you could do that. Like and it kind of crushes your plans and that kind of thing. But for 4 people that love the game and know their faction really well and know what the other factions can do really well, it can be really, really interesting. As for your question about co-op, we're keeping it at 2-player co-op. So the co-op scenarios that are in the game already, the 2-player co-ops, are already very complicated with a lot of things to track. We tried 3-player co-op. There's just too much going on, and it basically necessitates you playing against 3 additional factions just to have enough units and things going on the board to make it challenging. Or what it requires is it requires us to scale back the amount of units that the players are allowed to deploy, which just fundamentally makes the game less interesting and less fun. So so anyway, for now, sticking with the 2 players just to not completely overwhelm the complexity of the game.
Yeah, it makes sense. Question in from Simon Todd: are both hardcover books considered nice to haves, like the Too Many Bones log books, or is there anything in them contained that adds any extra gameplay?
Yeah. So the first book, The Joining War, does not have any new gameplay content in it. It's all story and lore and art. It does take all the scenarios that were released as a part of the first cycle of content and put them all into one book together, so that you don't have the multiple scenario books that you're paging through. But the second book, Ankar's Plunder, that we're putting in this campaign, does have some unique scenarios in it, but those are also available in the softcover version of the book that's only $10. If you're just looking to get all the gameplay, you don't want all the extra lore and art and all that kind of stuff, you can simply buy the $10 Ankar's Plunder softcover book and you'll have everything you need.
Right, cool. There is another question that's just arrived in the chat as well, and I don't know if you've ever been in a live Q&A that's very informal and received an official business proposition, but Matthias from Frosted Games really would like to bring a full localized version of Too Many Bones in German. So there you go. business propositions in
that
the
a
middle of a
lot.
live Q&A.
Yeah, we get that a lot, and if I can respond to it, we're looking at possibly doing some language packs for Too Many Bones.
Okay.
We will likely never release a fully localized version of any of our games, just stock in any particular region, simply because they're too expensive to
Yeah.
print. We don't speak any of those languages, so we can't like track. It's hard for us to track a lot of like the changes or rules, massaging that happens sometimes between print runs.
Yeah.
And managing stock in various regions for us is difficult to do. A lot of companies that want to do localization also want to distribute the game, and that's tough for us, again, because of the margins that are available on our games because they're so expensive to print. So again, we are looking at the possibility of doing some language packs for Bones specifically, and if Cloudspire continues to gain momentum and sees enough kind of critical mass in various regions of the world, we would also potentially look at that for Cloudspire eventually. Yep.
Cool. Right. Wrapping things up, what's new for Cloudspire after this?
We will see. So, the Too Many Bones was a big hit, and then Undertow really put it over the top in terms of its kind of public persona and its notoriety and that kind of thing. So we're hoping that this campaign does the same thing for Cloudspire that Undertow did for Too Many Bones. We've alluded to the fact that there are more factions potentially coming in the game, and that's really going to be based on sales more than anything else. So if people continue to love and play this game, we'll continue to add content to it, because why wouldn't we? So we'll see what happens. So far so
yeah. And what's new on the horizon, not a deliberate pun there, outside of Cloudspire but at Chip Theory Games, those things that you're not allowed to tell us, which of those will you accidentally tell us?
Yeah. So here's what I checked with my bosses to see what I'm allowed to say. I'm allowed to say we have 3 separate big box titles in development right now. And I can say that 3 of them. Yeah. So, and I can say we have our schedule of releases pretty well timed out over the course of the next 2 years. I can say that one of them is potentially, there's no ink on a contract yet, so we can't say for sure, but one of them is a licensed product and project that I think will absolutely blow people's minds, assuming that the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed. And I will say that one of them is for sure, at least one of them is a brand new IP that I think will be really, really, really exciting to people once they see what's happening. So the other number 3 I can't talk about at all yet. I can't give you anything about that, but one of them, brand new IP, one of them will blow your mind, and it's a license. So that's what I got.
That's interesting. I knew you were working on something. I didn't know you were working on 3 big box new games, because Too Many Bones, Cloudspire, they're big games, and to have 3 more sort of in the pipeline. But Chip Theory Games has grown recently as well, so. Yeah,
and we brought in, a lot of people know this, we brought in Andrew Navarro. He is the former head of studio at Fantasy Flight Games. And so he's really helping us kind of up the game in terms of polish on our games and, growing up a little bit. We're kind of coming out of the really startup phase as a company, but he's also leading the charge on licensed stuff, as obviously, FFG has worked with Star Wars and Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, cool. Will Chip Theory Games be attending Gen Con if it still happens?
If it still happens, our plan is still, we're still planning to be there if it happens. I mean, this is my opinion. I'll be shocked if it happens. In fact, I'm holding my breath even for UKGE and Essen still to happen, but we'll see. I don't have any inside information to that end. I just looking, trying to read the tea leaves. It doesn't look promising, but yes, if it happens, we will, we'll try to be there for sure.
Yep, I haven't booked my flights for Gen Con yet, and I'm not going to at the moment. Successful Geek has just said in the chat, Chip Theory Games Star Wars big box game announced. There you go. You accidentally let it slip. I think they're putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 7, which is exactly what I did, to be fair.
There we go. Yeah, there we
go. Do you see a competitive future for Cloudspire?
That's an interesting thing. So especially at things like conventions, that was something we talked about even around the original release. the original release got out a little bit later than we had hoped, so we didn't quite have it ready for Gen Con. I've heard people compare it to kind of a lifestyle game with the amount of stuff that you need to track and learn and all that kind of stuff. We'd love to do something like that. That's not anything we have like presently really in the cards. But again, a lot of things in the world of Cloudspire are riding on how successful this print run ends up being, this Kickstarter and this print run. So we'll see what happens. We love the idea though.
Yeah. And another question in, can you re-upload the video that you once uploaded for painting the minis? I didn't realize there was one.
I don't think we have or had one of those actually. So
Well,
there may
unless
have,
they were asking
maybe
me.
they're talking. Yeah, they're asking you, Paul.
But I have never done a video on painting the minis. I've done photos all over the internet about me painting the minis, but I've not done a video on it. So right, okay, that's the end of my questions. Was there anything you wanted specifically to talk about that we haven't mentioned?
I don't think so. Again, anyone who wants to come check out the Kickstarter, we'd love to have you. You can pledge at the $5 level and have access to everything. Again, we know some people are hurting for funds right now or are waiting on a paycheck because of a short campaign. Come grab a $5 pledge. You can upgrade in the pledge manager with no issues. Too Many Bones and Cloudspire, the base games of both, are sold out worldwide right now. So this is a great chance to get in and get some really, really stellar bundle options, and then also some really great shipping options as well. If you're in Australia or Asia specifically, this is the time to grab Chip Theory titles. Shipping from our website is exorbitant because it's expensive to ship one-off orders. But with our Kickstarters, we can use VFI Asia and we can use Aetherworks to fulfill, which allows us to significantly cut down on shipping costs for all our stuff. So otherwise, come check it out. I like to think that we run the best Kickstarters in the business. It's an amazing community of really, really enthusiastic people, not full of a lot of the toxicity you might see on other communities. So come say hey, come pledge. We'd appreciate it. And that's what I got.
Yep. Final questions in from the chat. Will you be keeping the riddle stroke secret stuff only for Too Many Bones, or are you planning to do it for others? Now, I don't know what that is.
What riddles? What are you talking about?
Don't know.
So for those of you who don't know, if you own Too Many Bones, you should look on the back of your rule book and look for anything that might look like something you could find on the internet. Okay. And it may take you down some interesting rabbit holes. Right now, we're planning on keeping that a Too Many Bones exclusive thing. I think I can say, so Splice and Dice is fulfilling right now. We do have a little something cooked up for Splice and Dice, and then coming hopefully sometime in 2020, we have something else riddle related that's gonna, I think, blow everyone's minds, but I can't talk about that just yet. So
okay, cool. Right, well, let's wrap things up. And just wanted to say for those people watching this, I'm a big Cloudspire fan. I've been playing Cloudspire a lot. I think I've logged 16 plays and would happily play it another 100 times. But this Friday, live on my channel at 7 o'clock, I'm doing a tutorial and playthrough video of Too Many Bones Undertow, where I'm not doing the teaching. One of my friends is going to join me in a Skype call just like this, and they're going to teach me how to play Too Many Bones this Friday night. I'm really excited about it because Too Many Bones, I've heard about it a lot. Lots of friends of mine really like it. The community seems great for it. And I've struggled to learn it in the past, so the best way for me is to have a friend who really loves the game to teach me how to play. And I think I said to Shannon this week that I think there's a 98% chance that I'm going to like the game based on everything that I've heard about it. So
I hope so.
We will see.
I hope so.
Yes, we will see. And I'll have a look at the back of the rulebook for this riddle then.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
You can also search the Board Game Geek. If you search for the Too Many Bones thread about the riddle, you'll learn a lot.
Okay. Has the riddle been solved, or is it another?
Yes.
It has. Right. Okay.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you very much, Josh, for your time. I will let you get back to managing the Kickstarter campaign and answering all of those questions from everybody.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Right. Cheers, all. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.